ability to be logical in everyday life, because not only have we learned that language, English, but I have also learned, this propositional logic, which gives me a use of and, or, and not, and if then, and if and only if, So if I have a grasp of those, and that enables me to think in terms of the language that I'm speaking every day, hey, nobody's here. Well, wait a minute. It has to be the case that somebody's here because I just said that, and that means I'm here. So nobody else is here except me. Okay. Now I fixed something that was problematic in my English because of my familiarity with a language like this that says there's problems, logical problems, if you're just casual and not paying attention to what you're doing. And of course, when we also talk about the media, the technological media, we know that even though there's a multiplicity of logical languages created for these devices, and we talked a little bit about that. I mentioned Babbage's engines. I didn't mention Alan Turing, who's another individual that helped develop computers. And of course, he was a significant person in World War II, creating the computer that enabled them to break down the German messages and figure out what the code was so that they could read the Germans' mail and know what they were planning to do. You might have seen the movie. Pretty good movie, pretty sad movie, because of course there were other issues associated with that. By the way, the same thing with the Oppenheimer movie that came out recently. If you were hoping to get a grasp of all the things going on involved in creating the first atomic bomb, probably really disappointed, because it was all about the personal conflicts, the human conflicts between him and one particular other member of the government who didn't like him because he was of the impression, a false impression, according to the movie, that he had ostracized him from Einstein. It's totally false. But the movie was all focused about this personal interaction and why Oppenheimer basically ended up losing his clearance, so he couldn't continue working on the projects after that Manhattan Project was over. Terrible movie as a result, if what you were expecting was more history. In any case, we're talking about virtual reality when we're talking about languages, and what makes it grounded so that it is reality for us is the intersocial nature, or the social nature. Do you have to say intersocial? The social nature of all of these realities. So if you think about it, I can't create a language that's just for me. I can't have a private language. In fact, if you're curious about this, it's even called the private language argument. And it takes us back to Wittgenstein, the idea that you can't have, it's incoherent. I can't have a language that's just mine, because then I can't have peers engage with me to correct any incorrect usage I make in that language. I need more than one of us using even a small code that just a few of us use in order to let me know if I'm in fact using the language correctly. What makes me a fluent speaker isn't just my own use of the language, but the approval that I get from other people who are also fluent speakers of the language, telling me that I'm using it correctly. So, we talk about the meaning of meaning, right? Which is, really tied into this argument here. I can't identify the correct meaning of a word unless a group of us are using it and, someone points out, no, that's not what that means. Take, for example, the concept of a meme.
I was thinking that earlier.
Right? The person who invented a meme, the concept of meme was Richard Dawkins on page 198 of his book, The Selfish Gene. And by the way, there's a new edition of The Selfish Gene that's the anniversary edition of it, and it's a different page number. So I have to go find it in that text and find out where. It was nice of them. They sent me a free copy. I don't know why. Why do I get free copies of stuff? But he basically came up with this idea because he was talking about genes, the selfish gene, which, by the way, they're not selfish. Everyone tells him he's misusing his language. See what I mean? Genes are not capable of having either altruism or selfishness. His defense is, well, that's not really what he was trying to suggest, that genes are selfish, but because of the nature of this dog-eat-dog world, genes literally end up surviving or not because of their adaptation to the particular environment as it is at the moment. And if they get passed on so that there's more of them, then they've succeeded. So in a sense, the focus of a gene is selfish. It's trying to maintain its own replication, basically. But of course, when people write in response to him and say that, the altruistic gene, or one of my more favorite ones is the ant and the peacock.
I feel like people are getting a little crazy when they're criticizing on that. You just had Wittgenstein up there. The key to that is context. The meaning of the word is correct in context.
Right. Plus form of life, because the form of life establishes the physical context whereby the language is successful in whatever it's accomplishing. Here's a book, though, that points out that not all genes are selfish. Ants, typically, how many ants actually pass on their genes? Only the queen, and I don't even know, where are the males in an ant colony that actually are involved with the queen? She's not making these thousands of baby ants just totally on her own. Is she? I don't think so.
There's a queen, and then there are other females, but they're like queens to be, kind of, from what my understanding. And then the queen ant, same thing with queen bees. They select the type of ants or the bees, whatever, that they need. And then they'll be like, we need more worker ants, so she'll breed with worker ants. And that's how.
Yeah. The point that Helena Cronin, who is terrific, by the way, Helena Cronin points out in this book is that most of the ants do not pass on their genes. They're working for the betterment of the entire colony, right? And so that's clearly not in any form of the word selfish, right? And a peacock, that's in there because the peacock, everyone knows the peacock male ends up with that beautiful plumage, which is totally not helpful when it comes to that peacock surviving. In fact, it uses a heck of a lot of energy for that peacock to do that. But if you've ever seen them approach a female and then just go like this, you know, and the hen is mesmerized, right? The peahen is mesmerized by that. In other words, the females are choosing who the males are that they're going to have a relationship with. You can tell I'm Protestant ethic there. And as a result, it's the hens in her book that make the choices. By the way, that's one of the reasons that got her into a lot of trouble with people, because the Darwinians don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that the females are the ones that are making the choices. They were of the impression that it's always the males
I thought the
that are
Darwinian
doing.
concept today was in general that females make the decisions for most species.
Well,
Genetically.
that could very well be because since she wrote this, she's been successful in communicating that. It should say somewhere on here when that book was written. And it was 1993.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, but so the idea that the selfish gene could be selfish, that's clearly a misuse of the concept of selfishness. But meanwhile, he came up with the idea that a meme is something that ought to be thought of as a life form, a virtual life form, of course, the same as a word. I'm not sure if we want to say genes are virtual, although we do talk about the language associated with chromosomes and so on. But the concept of the meme, it was his graduate student Susan Blackmore that took that and ran with it, and wrote a book called The Meme Machine. And the meme machine is us. We are the machine. And what happens is we get infected by these viruses called memes and reproduce them, pass them on. So I hear bum 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 bum, the Fate motif from the Fifth Symphony, right? And you can pass that on to other people. I think I'm right now infected with Taylor Swift memes. Apologize for that. How many of you hate Taylor Swift? We ought to play some Taylor Swift just to.
My wife listens to her every morning in the shower. I know every single song.
That's a sound of approval, by the way.
This is the sound of
Yeah.
disapproval.
Yes, that was approval.
I like her old stuff. When I was younger, I listened to her. Not anymore.
She's passé, but she's now the richest entertainer. I don't know.
I think Beyonce still has her.
Hmm. In any case, memes are communicated from one infected host to another. So if you think of it this way, are they a living... What do you think? In fact, maybe this would be a great quiz question. Are memes alive?
I kind of feel like I already answered that question, my last question a bit. In a sense, like yes, concepts themselves should be treated, whether they can be considered real or unreal, they should be treated as if real. If they were, then we'd be more mindful of them and we would make better decisions.
Well, the argument over, of course, is that they don't have a body. They're virtual. Well, but they do have a body. Because what is it that reproduces? granted, they don't have an existence on their own apart from the host. But at the same time,
Well, we could say the same thing about our identity.
they get passed on from host to host, maybe even using different media. I mean, now, I mean, when Beethoven first, wrote the Fifth Symphony, which was, what,
1800s.
1807 maybe? Well, in any case, they didn't have any recording devices that would have kept it